The Nevada desert night could kill a person just as surely as a bullet. And Wade Quinlan knew it the moment he saw the huddled form beneath the cottonwood tree just outside Panamint. His horse whinnied softly as he pulled the reins, squinting through the darkness at what he first thought might be a coyote or maybe just a pile of discarded fabric. Then the fabric moved, shivering violently, and Wade's heart jumped into his throat. He dismounted quickly, his boots hitting the hard, packed earth with a soft thud. The year was 1878, and he had seen plenty of desperate souls wandering these unforgiving lands, but something about this particular figure made him move faster than usual. As he approached, the moonlight revealed a woman curled into herself, her dark hair matted and tangled, her dress torn in several places, her lips nearly blue with cold. "Madam," Wade called out gently, not wanting to startle her. "Madam, are you hurt?" The woman's eyes snapped open, wild and terrified. She scrambled backward against the tree trunk, her whole body trembling. "Stay back," she managed through chattering teeth. "Just leave me alone." Wade held up his hands, showing he meant no harm. "It is cold enough out here to freeze a person solid. You need help." "Why?" The word came out sharp, defensive. "Why would you help me?" Wade paused, studying her face in the pale light. Even through the dirt and fear, he could see the remnants of strength there, a fierce determination that spoke to something deep in his chest. "Because you are worth it," he said simply, shrugging off his heavy coat. "Now, you can sit here and argue with me until you freeze to death, or you can let me get you somewhere warm. Your choice." The woman stared at him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she gave a tiny nod. Wade moved closer, draping his coat around her shoulders. She flinched at the contact but did not pull away. "Can you stand?" he asked. "I think so." Her voice was hoarse, scratched raw by the cold or crying or both. Wade offered his hand, and after another moment of hesitation, she took it. Her fingers were ice cold, and he could feel her entire arm shaking as he helped her to her feet. She swayed dangerously, and he caught her around the waist. "Easy now," he murmured. "When was the last time you ate something?" "I do not remember," she admitted, and that seemed to shame her. She tried to pull away from his supporting arm. "I can manage on my own." "Sure you can," Wade agreed, not letting go. "But you do not have to. My name is Wade Quinlan. I have got a room at the boarding house in town. Mrs. Chen runs it, and she is about the most respectable woman in 3 counties. She will see you get fed and warmed up proper." "Why are you doing this?" The woman asked again, but this time there was less suspicion and more genuine confusion in her voice. "Already told you," Wade said, guiding her toward his horse. "You are worth helping. Now what should I call you?" She was silent for so long that Wade thought she might not answer. Then quietly she said, "Lena Zimmerman." "Well, Miss Zimmerman, let us get you into town before we both freeze out here." Getting Lena onto the horse proved challenging. She was weak from exposure and hunger, and Wade finally had to lift her into the saddle himself. He swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist to keep her steady. She stiffened at first, then seemed to realize she had no choice but to trust him. Gradually, she leaned back against his chest, seeking warmth. The ride into Panamint took 20 minutes. Wade kept his horse at a careful walk, not wanting to jostle Lena too much. She felt fragile as glass in his arms, and he found himself wondering what had brought her to such desperate circumstances. Her dress, despite its current condition, had once been well made. The fabric was quality material, and he could see the remnants of careful stitching. This was not a woman born to poverty. "Almost there," he said softly as the lights of Panamint came into view. The town was small but growing, swollen with prospectors hoping to strike silver in the nearby mountains. Wade himself had come here 6 months ago, not seeking fortune but fleeing from a past that still haunted his dreams. He worked as a ranch hand on the Davidson spread just south of town, earning honest wages and keeping his head down. Mrs. Chen's boarding house sat on the eastern edge of town, a two-story structure that had been painted white once, but now showed the wear of the desert sun and wind. Wade guided his horse to the hitching post and dismounted carefully before reaching up to help Lena down. She practically fell into his arms, her legs giving out the moment her feet touched ground. "I have got you," Wade assured her, scooping her up entirely. She was lighter than he expected, and that worried him. "Just hold on a little longer." He kicked at the door rather than trying to knock, and within moments it swung open to reveal Mrs. Chen herself, a sturdy woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes took in Wade, then Lena in his arms, then narrowed. "This is not what it looks like," Wade said quickly. "Found her half frozen outside of town. She needs food and warmth and a safe place to rest." Mrs. Chen's expression softened immediately. "Bring her to the back room quickly now. I will heat some broth." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Mrs. Chen took charge of Lena with the efficiency of someone who had seen plenty of hardship in her life. She shooed Wade out while she helped Lena into clean, dry clothes, then allowed him back in only to sit in the corner while she coaxed warm broth and bread into their unexpected guest. Lena sat propped up in the narrow bed, wrapped in quilts, gradually regaining some color in her cheeks. Wade watched from his chair, studying her face now that he could see it properly. She was perhaps 22 or 23 years old, with strong features and eyes that held intelligence and pain in equal measure. Even bedraggled and exhausted, there was something striking about her. "Thank you," Lena said quietly, looking at Mrs. Chen. Then her gaze shifted to Wade. "Both of you." "You are welcome to stay here as long as you need," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "No charge for tonight. Tomorrow we can talk about arrangements." "I do not have any money," Lena admitted, and the shame in her voice made Wade's chest tighten. "Then we will figure something out," Mrs. Chen replied, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "For now, you should sleep. You are safe here." Wade stood, preparing to leave, but Lena's voice stopped him. "Mr. Quinlan," he turned back. "You said I was worth helping. You do not even know me. How could you know that?" Wade considered his answer carefully. "Every person is worth helping," he said finally. "But when I saw you under that tree, fighting so hard just to stay alive, I knew you were someone special, someone worth knowing." He touched the brim of his hat. "Get some rest, Miss Zimmerman. I will check on you tomorrow if that is all right." Lena nodded slowly, her eyes already drooping with exhaustion. Wade let himself out, retrieving his coat from where Mrs. Chen had hung it by the fire. The desert night wrapped around him as he led his horse to the stable, but he barely felt the cold. His mind was full of dark eyes and trembling hands, and a voice asking why anyone would help her. Sleep did not come easily that night. Wade lay in his own room at the boarding house, staring at the ceiling and wondering about Lena's story. The way she had flinched when he touched her, the desperation in her voice, the quality of her ruined dress, all of it pointed to something bad. Someone running. Someone hiding. He told himself it was none of his business. He had helped her, ensured she was safe, and that should be the end of it. Wade Quinlan did not get involved in other people's problems. He had learned that lesson the hard way back in Missouri, where getting involved had cost him everything he loved. But when morning came, and he found himself walking to Mrs. Chen's dining room for breakfast, his eyes immediately sought out the chair where he hoped Lena might be sitting. She was there, looking better than she had the night before, but still fragile, still wary. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something Wade could not quite name. "Morning," he said, taking the seat across from her. "Good morning, Mr. Quinlan." Her voice was stronger today, clearer. Mrs. Chen had worked her usual magic, it seemed. "Wade is fine," he said. "Mr. Quinlan makes me sound about 40 years older than I am." A tiny smile tugged at the corner of Lena's mouth, the first he had seen from her. It transformed her face, making her look younger and less hunted. "How old are you, if you do not mind my asking?" 26, Wade replied. "You?" 23. Lena picked at her breakfast, eggs and toast that Mrs. Chen had provided. "I should probably explain what happened, why you found me out there." Wade leaned back in his chair. "Only if you want to. You do not owe me your story." "But I owe you my life," Lena said quietly. "The least I can do is be honest with you." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I was engaged to be married. Thomas Garrett, a banker's son from Sacramento. My father arranged the match. He said it was a good opportunity, that Thomas came from a respectable family with money and connections." Wade heard the bitterness in her voice and waited for her to continue. "I tried to be a good daughter," Lena went on, her fingers tightening around her fork. "I tried to believe my father knew best. But Thomas, he was not what he seemed. In private, he was cruel. He enjoyed causing pain, making me feel small and afraid. I tried to tell my father, but he would not listen. Said I was being dramatic, that all marriages required adjustment and sacrifice." "So you ran," Wade said, understanding dawning. Lena nodded. 2 days before the wedding, I took what little money I had hidden away and caught a stage heading east. I thought I could disappear, start over somewhere new. But the stage was robbed outside of town. They took everything, including my bag and money. The driver was killed. I managed to run during the confusion, and I just kept running. I walked for 2 days, hiding during daylight, moving at night. I thought I was going to die out there, then you found me." The weight of her story settled between them. Wade understood running, understood the desperation that drove someone to risk everything for a chance at freedom. "Your father and this Thomas fellow, will they be looking for you?" "I imagine so," Lena said. "My father is not a man who takes defiance well. And Thomas, he always said I belonged to him, that no one could take what was his." Wade felt anger spark in his chest at the possessive cruelty in those words. "You are not property. You do not belong to anyone but yourself." Lena's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked them back rapidly. "I wish my father believed that. I wish I had believed it sooner." "Well, you are safe here," Wade said firmly. "Panamint is not exactly a destination town, mostly prospectors and ranch hands. Easy enough to disappear into the crowd, and Mrs. Chen is fiercely protective of people under her roof." "I need to find work," Lena said, straightening her shoulders. "I cannot accept charity indefinitely." "Mrs. Chen mentioned she could use help with the boarding house," Wade offered. "Cooking, cleaning, changing linens. It would not pay much, but it would cover room and board plus a little extra." "I would be grateful for anything," Lena said earnestly. "I can cook and clean and sew. My mother taught me before she died." Over the next few days, Lena settled into life at the boarding house. Wade found himself inventing excuses to stop by, ostensibly to check on repairs that needed doing or to deliver supplies. In truth, he just wanted to see her, to watch as color returned to her cheeks and the haunted look in her eyes gradually faded. They fell into a pattern of conversation, usually in the evening after the other boarders had retired. Wade would sit in the parlor with a cup of coffee while Lena mended linens or darned socks, and they would talk. He learned that she loved books, but had been forbidden from reading anything her father deemed inappropriate, which seemed to be everything interesting. She had a quick wit and a talent for drawing, Though she had not picked up a pencil in months, in return, Wade found himself sharing stories he had not told anyone in years. About growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about losing his parents to fever when he was 19, about the woman he had almost married before she died in a fire that destroyed half their town. Lena listened without judgment, her dark eyes sympathetic and understanding. "Is that why you came west?" she asked one evening, her needle pausing in its work. "To escape the memories, partly," Wade admitted. "Though I learned you cannot really outrun grief. It follows wherever you go. But out here, at least I could start fresh, be someone new." "I understand that feeling," Lena said softly. "The desire to be someone different, someone not defined by past mistakes or other people's expectations." Wade looked at her across the lamp-lit room and felt something shift in his chest. It was not just attraction, though he could not deny he found her beautiful. It was recognition. She understood him in a way few people ever had. They were both running from ghosts, both trying to build new lives from the ashes of old ones. The weeks passed, sliding from late autumn toward winter. Wade continued his work at the Davidson ranch, handling cattle and mending fences and breaking the occasional horse. It was hard, honest work that left him tired in the evenings but satisfied. Lena thrived at the boarding house, revealing a talent for organization and a warm manner that made the other boarders comfortable. Mrs. Chen declared she did not know how she had managed without her. Wade noticed the change in Lena beyond just her improved health. She laughed more easily now, and the tension that had kept her shoulders rigid gradually loosened. She had opinions about things and was not afraid to voice them. When one of the boarders, a prospector named Jim, made a crude comment about women knowing their place, Lena fixed him with a cool stare and informed him that his laundry would be ready when he learned some manners. Mrs. Chen had cackled with delight, and Jim had apologized profusely. But Wade also noticed the way Lena sometimes froze when a stranger entered the boarding house, how her eyes would dart to the exits, calculating escape routes. He noticed how she flinched at sudden movements or raised voices. The fear Thomas Garrett had planted in her had not disappeared entirely. It lingered like a shadow, and Wade found himself wanting desperately to chase that shadow away. It was a cold December evening when everything changed. Wade had been helping Mrs. Chen repair a section of the porch railing when Lena came rushing out, her face pale and her hands shaking. "There are men in town asking questions," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The butcher's boy told me. They are showing a photograph, asking if anyone has seen the woman in it. He said they described me perfectly. Dark hair, dark eyes, about 23 years old." Wade's blood ran cold. How many men? 3, from what the boy said. They are working their way down the main street, questioning shopkeepers. "Get inside," Wade said immediately. "Pack whatever you can carry. We may need to move quickly." But Lena shook her head. "I will not bring trouble to Mrs. Chen's door. She has been too kind to me. If they find me here, they might hurt her to punish me for running." "Then we will not let them find you," Wade said firmly. He turned to Mrs. Chen. "Can you claim ignorance if they come asking? Say you have not seen anyone matching her description." Mrs. Chen nodded, her expression grim. "I am very good at seeing nothing when I choose to." "I will take Lena to the Davidson ranch," Wade decided. "Mr. Davidson owes me a favor or two. He will let us use the line shack up in the hills. It is remote enough that no one will stumble across it accidentally." "Wade, no," Lena protested. "This is my problem. You should not risk yourself for me." Wade took her hands in his, feeling how cold they were despite the warmth of the house. "Listen to me. You asked me once why I would help you. The truth is, somewhere along the way, it stopped being about just helping a stranger. I care about you, Lena, more than I probably should, and I will be damned if I let some rich man's son drag you back to a life that was killing your spirit." Lena stared at him, her eyes wide. "You care about me." "More than care," Wade admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "I think I am falling in love with you. Have been since that first night when you asked why I would help, and I realized I would do just about anything to see you safe and happy." Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks, but she was smiling. "I thought it was just me. I thought I was foolish for having feelings for the man who rescued me, that it was just gratitude or dependence or something other than real." "Does it feel real?" Wade asked, his heart pounding. "Yes," Lena breathed. "It feels more real than anything I have ever known." Wade wanted to kiss her, wanted to pull her close and promise her everything would be all right, but there was no time for that now. "We need to move. Grab your things." 10 minutes later, they were riding out of Panamint on Wade's horse, taking the back trails to avoid being seen. Lena sat in front of Wade, his arms around her, holding the reins. She fit against him perfectly, and even in the midst of danger, Wade felt a rightness about having her close. The Davidson Ranch sprawled across several hundred acres of scrubland and rocky hills. The lined shack Wade had mentioned sat in the foothills about 5 miles from the main ranch house. It was a simple one-room structure used by the ranch hands during cattle drives, stocked with basic supplies and firewood. Not luxurious, but shelter and safety. They reached it just as full darkness fell. Wade helped Lena down from the horse and led her inside while he tended to the animal. When he returned, he found Lena had lit the lantern and was examining their temporary home. "It is not much," Wade apologized. "It is perfect," Lena said, turning to face him. "We are together. That makes it perfect." Wade crossed the small space between them in 2 strides, and then he was kissing her finally, desperately. Lena melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "We will figure this out," he promised. "Somehow we will find a way for you to be free." "I am already free," Lena said softly. "For the first time in my life, I feel truly free, because I choose to be here with you, not because someone told me I had to, but because this is what I want." They spent that night talking, planning, and holding each other close. Wade learned more about Lena's childhood, about a mother who had encouraged her to think and question and dream, and a father who had grown bitter and controlling after his wife's death. Lena learned about Wade's dreams of someday owning his own piece of land, a small ranch where he could raise horses and maybe a family. "That sounds beautiful," Lena said, her head resting on Wade's shoulder as they sat together on the narrow cot. "A place where you could build something lasting." "A place where we could build something lasting," Wade corrected. "If you would want that, with me, I mean." Lena lifted her head to look at him, her eyes shining in the lamplight. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They kissed again, slower this time, savoring the moment. Wade knew they still had problems to solve. Thomas Garrett and his men were searching for Lena, and they would not give up easily. But right now, in this small shack in the Nevada hills, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the woman in his arms and the future they were beginning to imagine together. Morning brought reality crashing back. Wade rode to the main ranch house to speak with Mr. Davidson, leaving Lena hidden at the lined shack. He found the ranch owner in his office, poring over account books. "Wade," Mr. Davidson greeted him, a weathered man in his 50s with a no-nonsense attitude. "What brings you up here so early?" Wade laid out the situation as honestly as he could. He had always been straight with Mr. Davidson, and he saw no reason to start lying now. The ranch owner listened in silence, his expression unreadable. "So you have got a young woman hiding from her former intended, and her father," Mr. Davidson summarized when Wade finished. And you are asking me to look the other way while you use my line shack as a hideout? Yes, sir, Wade said. I know it is asking a lot. Mr. Davidson leaned back in his chair, studying Wade carefully. You love this girl. I do, sir. And she loves you back. This is not just you being noble and her being grateful. She loves me back, Wade said with certainty. We both know what we want. Mr. Davidson was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. My wife ran from an arranged marriage when she was about this girl's age. Ran all the way from Boston to San Francisco to escape a man her family had chosen for her. I met her working in a hotel, fell for her hard and fast. Her family sent men looking for her, too. Took 3 years before they finally gave up and left us in peace. Wade had not known that story. Mr. Davidson rarely spoke about his past. You can use the line shack, the ranch owner said. And if anyone comes around asking questions, I have not seen a woman matching any description. But Wade, you need to understand this might not blow over quick. Men like this, men who think they own other people, they do not let go easy. I understand, sir, and I am grateful. How are you set for supplies? We will manage. Nonsense. Mr. Davidson stood, walking to a strongbox in the corner. He pulled out several bills and handed them to Wade. Consider it an advance on your wages. Get what you need from the general store, and Wade, be careful. Do not underestimate what desperate, angry men might do. Wade rode back to Panamint, watching carefully for any sign of Thomas's men. Mrs. Chen confirmed they had indeed come to the boarding house, showing a photograph and asking pointed questions. She had told them she had seen no one matching the description, and they had eventually moved on, but they had not left town yet. They are staying at the hotel, Mrs. Chen said, her face worried. 3 men, like Lena said. One of them is Thomas Garrett himself. Tall, fair-haired, expensive clothes. He has a mean look about him, especially the eyes. Wade bought supplies quickly and carefully, splitting his purchases between several stores to avoid drawing attention. He added some fabric and thread, thinking Lena might appreciate having something to do with her hands during the long days ahead. A book of poetry caught his eye, and he added that too, remembering how she had talked about her love of reading. He was loading everything onto his horse when a voice called out behind him. You there, Cowboy. Wade turned slowly, his hand instinctively moving toward the gun at his hip. 3 men stood behind him, and he knew immediately who they were. The one in the middle had to be Thomas Garrett. Everything about him screamed wealth and privilege, from his tailored clothes to his polished boots. But Mrs. Chen was right about the eyes. They were cold, calculating, cruel. Can I help you, gentlemen? Wade asked, keeping his voice neutral. We are looking for someone, Thomas said, pulling a photograph from his pocket. A young woman, dark hair, dark eyes, about this tall. He held his hand up to indicate Lena's height. She ran away from Sacramento about 6 weeks ago. We have reason to believe she may have passed through this area. Wade barely glanced at the photograph, though his heart clenched seeing Lena's face captured there, smiling in a way he had never seen her smile. Sorry, cannot help you. I work at a ranch outside of town. Do not see many people. You are certain? Thomas stepped closer, and Wade caught the scent of expensive cologne mixing with something uglier underneath, the smell of someone who enjoyed using power over others. There might be a reward for information leading to her recovery. Like I said, I cannot help you. Wade turned back to his horse, preparing to mount. Thomas's hand shot out, grabbing Wade's shoulder. I was not finished talking to you. Wade looked down at the hand, then up at Thomas's face. Remove your hand, or I will remove it for you. For a moment, tension crackled in the air. The 2 men with Thomas moved their hands toward their guns. But Thomas, perhaps seeing something in Wade's eyes that warned him this cowboy was not easily intimidated, stepped back with a cold smile. "Apologies," he said, though there was no sincerity in it. "I am just concerned about my fiancée. She was not well when she left. Confusion, hysteria. Her father and I are worried she might hurt herself or others." Wade recognized the lie for what it was, an attempt to paint Lena as unstable, to justify whatever Thomas planned to do when he found her. "Well, I hope you find her and that she is all right," Wade said flatly, "but I really cannot help you." He mounted his horse and rode away, feeling Thomas's cold gaze boring into his back. He did not relax until he was well outside of town, and even then, he kept checking over his shoulder to make sure he was not being followed. Lena was waiting anxiously when he returned to the line shack. She rushed into his arms the moment he dismounted, and he held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I saw them," he admitted. "Thomas and 2 others. They confronted me in town." Lena pulled back, her face pale. "Did they suspect you know where I am?" "I do not think so." "But they are not giving up. Thomas is telling people you are mentally unwell, that you need to be brought back for your own safety." Anger flashed in Lena's eyes. "Of course he is. He always said I was too emotional, too sensitive, that I did not understand what was good for me. It was his favorite way of dismissing anything I said or felt." Wade cupped her face in his hands. "We will get through this. I promise you, Lena, I will not let him take you back." The days that followed were some of the strangest of Wade's life. During daylight hours, he worked at the ranch as usual, maintaining the illusion that nothing had changed. But every evening, he returned to the line shack and to Lena, and those hours felt more real than anything else. They learned each other in the quiet intimacy of that small space. Lena taught Wade to appreciate poetry, reading aloud by lamplight while he listened with his eyes closed, her voice washing over him like music. Wade taught Lena to shoot, figuring she should know how to defend herself if it came to that. She proved a quick study, her hands steady and her eyes sharp once she overcame her initial nervousness around the gun. They talked about everything and nothing. Wade learned that Lena had always wanted to see the ocean, that she was terrified of spiders but fascinated by thunderstorms. Lena learned that Wade had a beautiful singing voice he rarely used, that he had a weakness for apple pie, and that he could sketch remarkably well, a skill he had developed as a boy while watching his father's horses. "Draw me," Lena requested one evening, handing him the pencil and paper he had been using to work out ranch accounts. "I am better with horses," Wade protested, but she insisted. So he tried, his hand moving across the paper, capturing the curve of her cheek, the intelligence in her eyes, the small scar near her temple that she said came from falling out of a tree as a child. When he finished and showed her the result, Lena's eyes filled with tears. "This is how you see me?" she asked. "This is who you are," Wade replied. She kissed him then, deep and passionate, and for the first time they crossed the final boundary between them. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies with the same care they had learned each other's hearts. Afterward, lying tangled together in the narrow cot, Lena whispered that she had never felt so safe, so cherished, so completely herself as she did in Wade's arms. "Marry me," Wade said suddenly, the words surprising even himself. "I know we have not known each other long, and I know our circumstances are not ideal, but I love you, Lena Zimmerman. I want to spend my life with you." Lena propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with wonder. "You truly want to marry me?" "Even though I bring nothing but trouble and complications." "You bring light and laughter and love," Wade corrected. "Everything else we will figure out together, so what do you say? Will you marry me?" "Yes," Lena breathed. 1,000 times yes." They married 3 days later in a small ceremony at the Davidson ranch house. Mrs. Davidson, a warm-hearted woman who had immediately taken Lena under her wing upon meeting her, stood as witness along with Mr. Davidson. Mrs. Chen came too, bringing a cake she had baked specially. The circuit preacher happened to be passing through, and he performed the ceremony in the Davidsons' parlor, his voice solemn as he bound Wade and Lena together in marriage. Lena wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Davidson had altered to fit her. She had no family present, no friends from her old life. But standing there holding Wade's hands and speaking her vows, she had never felt less alone. This was her real family now, these people who had taken her in and protected her and celebrated her happiness without asking for anything in return. Wade could not stop looking at his wife. The word felt both strange and perfectly right. When the preacher pronounced them married and Wade kissed Lena for the first time as her husband, he felt something settle deep in his chest. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The celebration was small but joyful. Mrs. Chen's cake was delicious, and Mrs. Davidson produced a bottle of wine that she said had been saving for a special occasion. Mr. Davidson shook Wade's hand and told him he was getting the better end of the deal, which made Lena laugh. But the happiness was tinged with the awareness that their troubles were not over. Thomas and his men were still in Panamint, still searching. Wade and Lena could not hide forever. The solution came from an unexpected source. A week after the wedding, Mr. Davidson called Wade into his office with news. "I've got a proposition for you," the ranch owner said. "I have been thinking about expanding operations, running cattle up in Oregon. I need someone I trust to scout the territory, find good grazing land, maybe set up a satellite operation. It would mean leaving Nevada, being gone for at least 6 months, maybe longer." Wade understood immediately what Mr. Davidson was offering. "You are giving us a way out." "I am giving you a job," Mr. Davidson corrected. "A real job with real pay. But yes, it would get you and your wife far from here, give things time to cool down. Thomas Garrett cannot search forever. Eventually, he will have to go back to Sacramento, and maybe then you two can come home safely." "Why are you doing this?" Wade asked, genuinely curious. Mr. Davidson smiled. "Because you are a good man and a hard worker, and your wife reminds me of my own when she was young, fierce and brave and deserving of a chance at happiness. And because I still remember what it was like to be scared that someone would take the woman I loved away from me." Wade shook the ranch owner's hand. "Thank you, sir, for everything. Just send regular reports and do not get yourselves killed up in Oregon," Mr. Davidson said gruffly. "That is thanks enough." Wade broke the news to Lena that evening. She listened quietly, then surprised him by throwing her arms around him. "Oregon," she said, testing the word. "I have never been to Oregon." "You have never been anywhere except Sacramento and Nevada," Wade pointed out. "Exactly. This is perfect. We can start completely fresh, build something new. No one in Oregon will know anything about Thomas Garrett or my father or arranged marriages. We can just be Wade and Lena." They began preparing for the journey immediately. Mrs. Chen contributed supplies and blankets. The Davidsons provided a sturdy wagon and 2 good horses. Mrs. Davidson helped Lena sew practical traveling clothes and gave her a cookbook filled with recipes that could be made over a campfire. On their last evening in Nevada, Wade and Lena climbed the hill behind the line shack to watch the sunset. The desert stretched out before them, painted in shades of gold and orange and deep purple. It was beautiful and harsh and unforgiving, just like everything else about their time here. "I will miss this place," Lena said softly, leaning against Wade's side. "It is where I found you, where I found myself, really." "We will come back someday," Wade promised, "when it is safe. when Thomas has moved on to terrorizing some other poor woman, though God help her? Do you think he will ever stop looking for me? Wade considered lying, offering easy comfort. But Lena deserved honesty. I think he will look for as long as he can. Men like him do not handle rejection well. But eventually, practical concerns will force him to move on. He will need to marry someone, produce an heir, keep up appearances in Sacramento society. He cannot do that while chasing across the West after a woman who clearly does not want him. I hope you are right. Lena was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know what is strange? I do not regret any of it. Even the terrible parts, the fear and the running and the night I almost froze to death, because all of it led me to you." Wade pulled her closer. "I was thinking the same thing. If you had not run, if I had not found you that night, we would never have met. You would be married to Thomas right now, miserable and trapped. And I would still be drifting, working for wages and going through the motions of living without ever really feeling alive." "Do you feel alive now?" Lena asked, tilting her face up to look at him. "More than I ever have," Wade said, and kissed her as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire. They left before dawn the next morning, their wagon packed with everything they owned, which was not much but felt like abundance. Wade drove while Lena sat beside him, and as they rolled out of Panamint heading north, neither of them looked back. The journey to Oregon took nearly 2 months. They traveled slowly, carefully, avoiding major towns where they might be recognized or where word might travel back to Thomas. Instead, they took back roads and little-used trails, camping under the stars and surviving on what they could hunt and gather, supplemented by the supplies the Davidsons had provided. It should have been miserable. The weather turned cold and wet as they climbed into the mountains. The wagon broke down twice, requiring repairs that took precious days. They got lost more than once, and there were nights when Wade lay awake worrying about whether they had enough food to make it to the next town. But Lena made it an adventure. She marveled at everything, from the towering pine trees to the deer they spotted at dawn to the crystal-clear streams where they filled their water barrels. She sang while Wade drove, her voice carrying over the creak of the wagon wheels. She learned to cook over an open fire, producing meals that were simple but delicious. At night, they huddled together for warmth in the wagon bed, talking and laughing and making love under blankets while the wind howled outside. "I have never been this happy," Lena confessed one night, her head resting on Wade's chest. "Is that strange? That I am happiest while living in a wagon in the middle of nowhere?" "Not strange at all," Wade assured her. "It is not about where you are. It is about who you are with and whether you are free to be yourself. You have both those things now." They crossed into Oregon territory in late February of 1879, and Wade immediately understood why Mr. Davidson was interested in expanding here. The land was green and fertile, with good water sources and vast stretches of grazing territory. They spent several weeks exploring, with Wade making careful notes and sketches while Lena helped map the terrain. Eventually, they settled temporarily in a small town called Lakeview, where Wade sent his first report to Mr. Davidson and waited for further instructions. The town was small and remote, populated mostly by ranchers and farmers. No one asked too many questions about the young couple who had arrived from Nevada. Wade found work helping at the local livery while Lena took in sewing and laundry. It was a simple life, but it was theirs. They rented a small cabin on the edge of town, and Lena immediately set about making it a home. She bought fabric and sewed curtains. She planted a small vegetable garden out back. She befriended the other women in town, particularly Mary Carter, the baker's wife, who was about Lena's age and lonely for female companionship. Wade watched his wife bloom in this new environment. The last shadows of fear faded from her eyes, replaced by confidence and contentment. She laughed easily now, and her smile came quickly. She had opinions about town matters and was not shy about expressing them. When the town council wanted to close the small school due to lack of funds, Lena organized the women to fundraise, and they raised enough money to keep it open for another year. "You are amazing," Wade told her one evening, watching her count the donations they had collected. Lena looked up, surprised. "I am just doing what needs doing." "No, you are leading, making a difference. This is who you were always meant to be before your father and Thomas tried to make you small and quiet." Lena set down her pencil and came to sit in Wade's lap. "You made this possible. You gave me the chance to discover who I could be." "You did that yourself," Wade corrected. "I just got lucky enough to be there when you needed help." Spring turned to summer, and Wade continued his scouting work for Mr. Davidson while building a life with Lena in Lakeview. The reports he sent back to Nevada were positive. Oregon had everything needed for successful ranching, and he had identified several promising parcels of land. In July, Mr. Davidson sent word that he would be traveling to Oregon himself to see the territory firsthand and to discuss future plans with Wade. The ranch owner arrived in late August, accompanied by Mrs. Davidson, who had refused to be left behind. Over dinner at the cabin, Mr. Davidson laid out his proposal. He wanted to purchase land in Oregon and establish a second ranch. He wanted Wade to manage it, with the possibility of becoming a partner after a few years if things went well. "It is a big opportunity," Mr. Davidson said. "But it is also a big risk. This would be your whole life, Wade, yours and Lena's. Are you ready for that kind of commitment?" Wade looked at Lena, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes, sir. We are ready." The details were hammered out over the next few days. Mr. Davidson would finance the purchase of land and the initial setup costs. Wade would manage operations and receive a salary plus a percentage of profits. After 5 years of successful operation, Wade would have the option to buy in as a full partner. "There is one more thing," Mr. Davidson said. "I have been making some inquiries back in Sacramento through business contacts. It seems Thomas Garrett got married about 3 months ago. To some banker's daughter, from what I hear." The marriage was announced with great fanfare in all the society pages. Lena's hand found Wade's, squeezing tight. "He got married. Seems his family's patience ran out," Mr. Davidson said. They needed the alliance with this banker, and they could not wait any longer for him to retrieve his runaway bride, so they found him someone else. "Does that mean he has stopped looking for me?" Lena asked, almost afraid to hope. "I cannot say for certain," Mr. Davidson admitted. "But it does suggest he has moved on with his life. And even if he harbors some lingering grudge, he is now a married man with responsibilities. Much harder to justify running off to Oregon to chase after a woman who clearly wants nothing to do with him." Wade felt the tension drain from Lena's shoulders. This was not a guarantee of safety, but it was close. Thomas had found another victim to manipulate, which was terrible for her, but meant he was less likely to remain obsessed with Lena. That night, lying in bed, Lena cried tears of relief. "It is really over," she whispered. "I am really free." "You have always been free," Wade reminded her, holding her close. "But yes, now you do not have to look over your shoulder anymore. Now we can really start building our future." Over the next year, their lives transformed. Mr. Davidson purchased a beautiful piece of land along a river valley, 3,000 acres of prime grazing territory. Wade threw himself into the work of building the ranch, hiring hands, purchasing cattle, constructing barns and outbuildings. Lena was his partner in everything, keeping the books, managing supplies, and proving herself as capable of handling ranch business as any man. By the winter of 1880, they had a herd of 500 cattle and a sturdy house to call their own. It was not large, just 4 rooms, but it was well built and warm, with glass windows and a real wood floor. Lena made it beautiful, sewing quilts and curtains, painting the walls cheerful colors, filling it with small touches that made it feel like home. It was also that winter when Lena discovered she was expecting their first child. She told Wade one evening after dinner, her face glowing with happiness and nervousness. Wade's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. He swept her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. A baby. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Lena asked, though his reaction made the answer obvious. Happy does not even begin to cover it, Wade said, kneeling down and pressing his ear to her still flat stomach. Hello in there, little one. This is your father. I cannot wait to meet you. The pregnancy was difficult at times. Lena suffered from terrible morning sickness in the early months, and Wade hovered anxiously, trying to help in whatever small ways he could. But as her belly grew and the baby's movements became visible, Lena bloomed. She was radiant, excited, already making plans for the nursery and sewing tiny clothes. Their son was born in late May of 1881, after a long labor that had Wade pacing frantically outside while the midwife and Mary Carter attended to Lena. When he was finally allowed inside and saw Lena holding their red-faced, squalling infant, Wade thought his heart might burst from his chest. Meet William, Lena said softly, named after Wade's father. William Quinlan. Wade held his son for the first time with trembling hands, awed by the tiny perfection of him. William had a shock of dark hair like his mother and his father's nose. His eyes, when they opened, were that deep blue that all babies had, though Wade was certain they would turn brown like Lena's eventually. He is perfect, Wade whispered. You are perfect. God, Lena, I love you so much. Being parents changed everything and nothing. The ranch work continued, but now it had even greater purpose. Wade was building something to pass on to his son, a legacy of hard work and honest living. Lena managed to balance caring for William with her ranch duties, though there were exhausting days when she questioned how anyone ever managed to raise children. Mary Carter became even more of a fixture in their lives, helping with William and offering advice from her own experience raising 3 children. Other ranch families in the area became friends, creating a community that supported each other through the challenges of frontier life. Mr. and Mrs. Davidson visited twice a year, and the ranch owner was clearly pleased with how the operation was developing. The cattle herd grew steadily, and they began to develop a reputation for quality stock. Wade's share of the profits increased each year, and he saved diligently, planning for the day when he could buy in as a full partner. That day came in the spring of 1883, 2 months before William's 2nd birthday. Mr. Davidson arrived with the partnership papers already drawn up, declaring that Wade had more than proven himself. They signed the agreement in the ranch house parlor while Lena and Mrs. Davidson looked on, making it official. Wade was now half owner of the Oregon ranch. To the Quinlan-Davidson Ranch, Mr. Davidson said, raising a glass of whiskey and toast. May it prosper for generations. They celebrated quietly that evening, just the 4 of them and young William, who was more interested in the cake misses. Davidson had brought them in understanding what the fuss was about, but Wade felt the weight and wonder of the moment. A decade ago, he had been a drifter with nothing but a horse and his wages. Now he was a husband, a father, and a ranch owner. He had a home, a family, a future. And it had all started with finding a shivering woman under a cottonwood tree and deciding she was worth helping. The years that followed brought their share of challenges. There were harsh winters when they lost cattle to cold and disease. There were dry summers when the grass withered, and they had to drive the herd to higher pastures. There were injuries and illnesses, near disasters and unexpected setbacks, but there were also tremendous joys. William grew into a bright, curious boy who loved the ranch and animals and following his father everywhere. Lena gave birth to a daughter in 1884, Emma, who had her father's light hair and her mother's fierce spirit. Another son, James, arrived in 1886, completing their family. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful operations in the region. Wade proved to have a talent not just for managing cattle but for breeding horses, and the Quinlan-Davidson Ranch became known for producing some of the finest working horses in Oregon. Lena managed the business side with sharp intelligence, negotiating prices and maintaining relationships with buyers that kept them profitable even in difficult years. As the children grew, Wade and Lena made sure they understood the value of hard work and the importance of treating others with respect and kindness. William learned to ride almost before he could walk, and he had his father's gift with horses. Emma was fearless and independent, declaring at age 5 that she would be a rancher just like her parents. James was quieter, more thoughtful, happiest with a book in his hands, which delighted Lena. They never forgot where they had come from or what they had survived to build this life. Every year on the anniversary of the night Wade had found Lena, they took a quiet walk together, just the two of them, and talked about everything they were grateful for. "I still remember how cold I was," Lena said on their 10th anniversary, leaning against Wade as they watched the sunset from the porch of their expanded house. "How scared! I thought I was going to die out there." "But you did not," Wade said, his arm around her shoulders. "You survived. You fought, and you let me help you." "Best decision I ever made," Lena said, smiling up at him. "Trusting the strange cowboy who said I was worth it." "You were worth it," Wade said seriously. "You still are. Every day with you has been a gift, Lena, even the hard days, even the struggles. I would not trade any of it." They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon, two people who had found each other in the darkness and built a life in the light. Mr. Davidson passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1891, and Mrs. Davidson decided to move to Oregon permanently to be closer to Wade and Lena, whom she considered the children she had never had. She lived in a small house they built for her on the ranch property, spoiling her adopted grandchildren and offering wisdom gained from a lifetime of frontier living. Wade bought out the Davidson share of the ranch, making the Quinlans sole owners. But they kept the Davidson name as part of the brand, honoring the man who had given them their start. The ranch continued to grow and prosper, becoming a fixture of the community. William grew into a fine young man, taking over more and more of the day-to-day ranch operations, as Wade's knees began to protest the long hours in the saddle. Emma proved as capable as any man at handling cattle and horses, eventually marrying a neighboring rancher's son and helping expand their joint operations. James went to college in Portland, studying law, but he always came home for summers, and he never lost his connection to the land where he was raised. As Wade and Lena grew older, they found themselves with more time to simply enjoy each other's company. They took long rides through the ranch property, remembering how things used to be and marveling at what they had built. They sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching their grandchildren play in the yard. They traveled occasionally, finally making it to the ocean so Lena could see the waves she had dreamed about. On a warm summer evening in 1895, as they celebrated their 16th wedding anniversary, Wade and Lena sat together on that same porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. You ever wonder what would have happened if you had ridden past that night? Lena asked, a question she had posed before over the years. If you had not stopped to help, Wade considered it seriously, as he always did. I think about it sometimes, he admitted. But then I remember I could not have ridden past. It was not in me to leave someone suffering if I could help. And something about you called to me, even from a distance. I think we were always meant to find each other. I like that idea, Lena said softly, that we were destined for this, for each other. Lena Quinlan, Wade said, turning to face her, you have made me the happiest man alive. Every single day with you has been an adventure, a joy, a gift. I would choose you 1,000 times over in any life, in any circumstance. Lena's eyes filled with happy tears. And I would choose you, Wade Quinlan, every time, forever. They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon, surrounded by the land they had built together, the family they had created, the life they had forged from nothing but hope and love, and the belief that sometimes the right person at the right moment can change everything. The ranch thrived for decades, passing eventually to William and his children, then to their children after that. The Quinlan name became synonymous with quality cattle and horses, with fair dealing and hard work, with treating the land and animals with respect. Every generation knew the story of how it all began, with a cowboy finding a woman shivering under the stars and deciding she was worth helping. And in the small family cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch, 2 headstones stood side by side, marking the resting place of Wade Quinlan and Lena Zimmerman Quinlan. The inscriptions were simple, just names and dates, but between them, carved into the stone, were the words that had started it all, because you are worth it. Years after Wade and Lena had passed, their great-grandchildren would visit those graves and ask about the ancestors whose love story had become family legend. They would hear about the desperate flight across the Nevada desert, the cowboy with a kind heart, the struggle to build a life together against all odds. They would learn that sometimes the greatest love stories do not begin with grand gestures or perfect circumstances, but with one person choosing to see the worth in another and offering help without expecting anything in return. The ranch stood as testament to what could be built when 2 people chose each other and committed to building something lasting. Through droughts and depressions, through wars and changing times, the Quinlan-Davidson Ranch endured, a monument to the power of love and determination, and the simple choice to help someone in need. And somewhere in the stars above that Nevada desert, in the cold night air that had once threatened to claim Lena's life, the story lived on, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope can arrive on horseback, offering a coat and a kind word and the promise that you are worth saving, worth loving, worth building a life with. The end came peacefully for both of them, Wade passing first in his sleep at the age of 71, Lena following him 2 years later at 68. They had lived full lives, rich with love and family and purpose. They had built something that would last long after they were gone. Not just a ranch, but a legacy of kindness, courage, and the transformative power of choosing love, even when circumstances suggested fear would be safer. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the funeral, telling stories of the remarkable couple who had started with nothing and built an empire through hard work and devotion to each other. They spoke of Wade's gentle strength, his ability to gentle the wildest horse and the most frightened child with equal patience. They remembered Lena's fierce intelligence, her refusal to accept limitations, her talent for making everyone feel welcomed and valued. But the story that was told most often, the one that never failed to bring tears and smiles, was the story of that first meeting. Of a cowboy who could have ridden past but chose to stop. Of a woman who could have refused help but chose to trust. Of the simple question, why help? And the profound answer, because you are worth it. In the end, that was what they had given each other and everyone around them. The unshakable belief that every person has worth, that kindness matters, that love can transform even the most difficult circumstances into something beautiful. It was a legacy more valuable than any ranch, more enduring than any fortune. And so the story ended as all the best stories do, with love triumphant, with family gathered, with a life well lived. Wade and Lena Quinlan had started as strangers in the desert, one desperate and one compassionate, and they had ended as partners in every sense of the word, having built a life together that honored the promise of that first meeting. The ranch continued to operate for many generations, each new inheritor learning the story of their ancestors and understanding the responsibility that came with it. To treat people with dignity, to offer help without expecting return, to recognize worth in every person, regardless of circumstances. To choose love over fear, compassion over judgment, action over indifference. These were the lessons Wade and Lena had lived, and they became the values that define not just a family but an entire community. The Quinlan-Davidson Ranch was known not just for its cattle and horses, but for the way it treated its workers, paying fair wages and providing good housing and respecting the dignity of every person who contributed to its success. That, too, was part of Wade and Lena's legacy. On quiet evenings, when the current generation of Quinlan sat on the porch of the ranch house, they could almost feel the presence of their ancestors, the love that had built this place still lingering in the air like the scent of sage and pine. They understood that they were stewards of something precious, something that had been purchased not with money but with courage and faith, and the decision to build something beautiful from broken circumstances. And somewhere in the vast Nevada desert, under a cottonwood tree that still stood after all these years, the wind whispered through the branches, carrying the echo of a conversation that had changed two lives and created a legacy that would endure for generations. A simple question and a profound answer, the beginning of a love story that proved sometimes the greatest adventures start with the smallest act of kindness, and the most valuable treasures are the ones we find when we stop to help someone in need.